business days after the county post their notice of intent to award the contract associated with the solicitation, or on the date the procurement solicitation is canceled by the county. This is a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting. Your attendance is not mandatory to bid. Questions asked in this meeting will not be officially answered. You must submit all your questions in the bonfire portal in writing, and they will be answered in a public notice posted to all parties. I will briefly highlight some key areas in this pre-bid meeting. However, you are encouraged to read all of the posted documents on the solicitation. After I highlight these areas, I will turn over to the Water Resources Project Manager, Don Hooks, to explain the specifications, and the Economic Development Special Coordinator, Diana, to explain the DWBE participation goal. The ITB was posted on February 10th, 2025. Questions deadlines is March 13th, 2025. That is 14 days after this pre-bid meeting. The ITB will close on March 20th, 2025 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will answer questions at the end, so if you could please hold them for me, that will be great, and we'll get through this as fast as we can so I don't hold up anybody. The county will only accept bids through the electronic bidding system, which is Bonfire. Any other bids submitted in any other formats will not be accepted. I'm going to go over the section 1.3 requirements. These must be adhered to when bidding on the solicitation. Section 131, the contractor must ensure a location within a reasonable distance of Hillsborough County to allow for adequate response time, availability, and utilization of county resources. The county reserves the right to inspect the location for conformance to these requirements. 132, for regularly scheduled work, personnel must be available to be on site to conduct regular maintenance and service from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 133, electricians provided by the contractor shall be a licensed journeyman. Licenses, certifications, and experience justifications shall be provided by the contractor upon request of the county project manager. 134, electronics technicians provided under this contract shall be certified by a manufacturer of the equipment serviced or have equivalent job-related experience or expertise as approved by the project manager. Licenses, certifications, and experience justifications shall be provided by the contractor upon request of the county project manager. 135, electrical design services provided shall be performed by a degreed or certified professional. Credentials for electric design service provider shall be supplied by the contractor upon request. No electrical design services shall be provided as defined by Florida Statute 287055 without prior authorization from a project manager. 138. Prior to commencing work, the contractor shall identify the county project manager at least one on-site person who is the contractor's competent supervisor. The supervisor shall be qualified, authorized person on the work site who will maintain order, observe the county's safety and security requirements specific to the work order, monitor the work, and effectively direct or redirect the contractor's personnel during the operation and completion of all work in this contract. 1.3.11, for emergency services, the contractor must be able to deploy a minimum of 2 electricians and 1 electrical helper with appropriate personnel, protective equipment, PPE, and equipment within 2 hours. I'm not going to read in detail section 1.5. It does state warranty and parts, so please make sure you read that. Section 1.6 is work hours and response time. Please make sure you read over that section. I do want to highlight section 2.1, which is allowances. There will be an allowance in the amount of $470,000 will be added to the total bid amount for third-party equipment testing at actual cost, parts and materials, and equipment rental, not otherwise specified in this solicitation, and expedited shipping. The award will be county's best interest. What that means for you in section 2.2, it states the award will be made to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder meeting the specifications. In this solicitation contains more than one line item, the county reserves the right to award by line item, by group, or by section, or by overall total price, whichever is determined to be in the county's best interest. The vendors are not required to bid on all groups. However, they are required to bid on every line item within that group. Section 2.3 is insurance. Please make sure you read over that. We will be requiring a certificate of insurance with all of the endorsements attached to that, and it will be approved by our risk department. Section 2.8 is the contract term. The contract term is 3 years for this contract. Section 2.13.2.1, which Diana will speak further in detail on, is our DM and DWBE participation goal. This is very important. There is a 10% goal on the solicitation, and an MBE1 form will be required through your bonfire submittal. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Don, and he can speak to you further in detail about the specifications. Don?
Thanks, Sharon. So first I wanted to see if anybody had any questions. If you've looked over the specifications and you had questions about the specifications, I wanted to answer anything before I just speak generally about it, because they're kind of long. So I didn't want to just kind of stab at what people might be interested in. If you have a question, I'd love to hear it. Just raise your hand and then I'll call you.
Hey, Don, if I got the floor just 1 second, I just wanted to clarify
Absolutely.
section 2.1 for the allowances, and it just sounded like it was all one, but it's actually not. So when you read that, it's going to be an allowance for third-party equipment testing at the actual costs, for parts and material not otherwise specified in this solicitation, equipment rental that may not be specified in this solicitation, as well as expedited freight on any parts that may need to be expedited by request of the project manager. So I just wanted to break that out so everybody understood.
But it'll come through as one allowance line, right?
Yes.
You're just explaining the way it works, right?
Okay. Yes, there's multiple parts to it, to that allowance. It's not just for equipment testing and actual cost with the parts and all that. It's multiple different items.
Thank you.
Originally, we were going to do separate items. Let's, for an example, 10,000 for testing, 10,000 for parts and materials, 10,000 for equipment rental, and 10,000 for expedited freight. But then you're limited. So what we did was we combined it all into one group of 470,000, and you can kind of disperse it as the project manager needs it. So that was it.
All right. Does anybody have any questions on the specifications at this time, or should I just start talking? Looking for hands.
Yeah, no questions at this time for me.
Thanks, Antonio. All right, then I'll just start talking. So the things that are written in the specifications, she actually read some of the more interesting ones. It says, for instance, that you need to be able to provide 2 electricians and a helper in an emergency call. That doesn't mean that I need 3 people on call constantly. The idea is you'll have somebody on call, and then if we need additional response, we can, access those people. For instance, all of the electricians on the call know it's very difficult to pull wire alone. So if a wire is bad and we need to pull a wire in the middle of the night, then we need to be able to have, at least 3 people available to pull that wire. When we're talking about the supervisor on site, that could just be one guy, right? If it's a guy flying solo and he's a journeyman electrician, and he's doing his work, then he's the supervisor, right? We understand that. We fully expect that's the way it'll be. But if it's a project where there are, more than one person, you need to identify to me who that person is that is in charge. And then, of course, we need to have basically a contact list, and we'll do that later, right? After award we'll get the contact list so that we know, the hierarchy of who's invited and who's at the actual site, right? Because if there's a problem, we need to know who to go to. So things like that. One of the other ones that we've run into in the past talking a little bit about the allowances that Brian mentioned, is we originally started out with multiple allowance lines, and they combined them into one line. That's why it's 3 or 4 separate things that are just in one line. It makes it a little bit more streamlined and easier to manage. One of the other factors that we've run into in the past is we need you, and we'll be, making sure we evaluate your references, because the references we've had in some of the previous agreements we've had issues with. So when we ask for references, we need you to provide them. You know what I mean? So if we can't verify your references, make sure, my suggestion to you is to call your references before you supply them to us, to let them know that we'll be checking them, right? Makes sense? As far as specific work, in the plants, we're going to have a whole lot of breaker testing, and that can be done through, if you don't have a contact already, that can be done through IPS/TAW. If you have another company that you want to use as a third-party breaker tester, that's fine. You'll just have to supply that information that's all written in the specifications, explaining that you have to provide their qualifications before we, allow you to pass through that that work. And then if you do it in-house, we want to see your qualifications for breaker testing, because we have had people in the past who attempted to provide the breaker testing themselves, but they were not qualified, and therefore we had some issues in the past. So that's one of the reasons that we set aside some of the restrictions for qualifications of the third-party breaker tester. Again, you don't have to use a third-party tester if you use it in-house. I just want to see your qualifications before we approve it. And then, so there's going to be a lot of breaker testing. There's also all kinds of miscellaneous electrical projects. There are line items specifically listed for non-electrical work. We included that line item. Sharon, I can't remember the exact name of the line item. Do you, the one that's not
Design
electrical?
services.
No, not the design services. The other one. It's it's work. It's like a labor line, but it's physical work. I can't remember.
I'll pull it up for you real quick.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Don't
sharing
have
your
it off the
screen.
top of my head, but I'll pull it up for you. I'll actually pull up the bonfire bid table for you.
Perfect.
All right, a couple steps to get there. Hang on one sec.
I appreciate that.
Share my screen. Did you want to scroll down to the bottom, correct?
Yeah, there it is.
Can you-
Skilled labor. So you see the
Yep,
skilled
there you
labor
go.
line. That could be anything from people digging ditches to people, with an excavator, to people pouring concrete because you need a transformer slab, to non-electrical work that still needs to be done. So we included this skilled labor line for the purposes of that non-electrical work type stuff that we still might need done as part of an electrical small project, right? This also gives a lot of flexibility for your 10% minority and disadvantaged goal, right? So if you're trying to hit that goal, you don't have to use an electrician. I know a lot of people in the past use suppliers, right? To hit the goal, but you've got a lot of flexibility in who you use as far as that goal. Still have to use, or I think it's preferred. I'm not. We'll let Diana explain who you have to use and where the preferences are, but giving you flexibility in it doesn't have to necessarily be an electrician to try and hit that goal. The design, the small scale design, the advanced troubleshooting, that's for your that's going to be a line for your sales engineers, or for your what do you call them, the proprietary engineers. Like, say you're going to use Schneider Services, or you're going to use ASCO, or you're going to use Alan Bradley, or one of these people that needs to have, or that we're going to need to have, be experts / engineers in their field. This isn't to be confused with large design engineering projects. That is all going to be handled through our existing engineering scope contract. This is specifically for switchgear, transformers, electrical systems. This is going to be your Square D services people, your Eaton, those kind of guys. So just to specify what that means. And then lightning protection, obviously you've got your lightning protection companies out there. If you're a certified lightning protection company, you can bill under this, but again, you'll have to get with me before it's approved, and we need to verify qualifications of what you're doing. If you're going to use a third party, you can still do that, but this number that you're bidding on is to do the third party, to estimate what the third party is going to cost you. So just keep that in mind. Then we have all the actual individual material line items, like the master packed breaker, the micrologic trip unit. There should be the safety switch. Obviously, it's a disconnect switch, 600 amp. Then we have an ASCO 300 series transfer switch, right? It's a should be, yeah, there you go. Straightforward, ASCO 300. We even gave you the part number of the one that we want you to bid on. So again, all of these say or equivalent at the discretion of Hillsborough County. If during a project you have a better unit that fits better, for instance, say you've got an ABB transfer switch that you want, that's going to fit the application better, and it's a rough equivalent cost to the ASCO 300 series, you submit that to me, we review it, we talk about it, and then we move forward. So this is what we want you to bid on, and then don't bid on the equivalent because you don't know what that's going to be for the application. Bid on this, right? That's why we've listed it, because that's our preference, right? Same thing with the breaker. That's our preference. Bid on that. Are there any questions about those line items? Again, let's see hands. If there are any.
I don't see any.
All right. All right. Well, having said all of that, if there's no other questions about any of the specifications or anything, we'll move on to Diana.
Diana, thank you.
So as it was previously mentioned, there is a 10% MBE participation goal on this project. At the time of bid submittal, the MBE1 form, also known as the subcontractors material suppliers list, will be required to be submitted. For that document, please ensure that the DMDWBE firms utilized have a current certification, and if they are eligible for a reciprocal, that they are not on our current graduated, denied, and reciprocal list, which is available on the county's website. On the MBE1 form, please include the scopes of work that you will be subcontracting out, along with the DMD-WBE's firm's name and its certification, and the letter of intents for those subcontractors will be requested upon the county's request, can be submitted upon the county's request or at the time of bid. You may also use firms that are certified with other government agencies, city, county, and state. So City of Tampa, City of St. Pete, State of Florida, just to mention a few, as long as they are not on our denied, graduated, or previous reciprocal list. Firms that have been graduated, denied, and have received a reciprocal once cannot be utilized to meet the established goal for this project. Bidders are also encouraged to provide their good faith efforts documentation, which would include the form itself and the backup documentation, should they think that they will not be able to meet the MBE participation goal using the MBE1 form. For both the MBE1 form, letter of intents, and the good faith efforts, you are allowed to reach out to myself or anyone from our minority and small business team, and we can better assist you with completing those documents, verifying that the certifications are current, and if there is a firm that you want to use that is certified with another government agency, that they are not on our current denied, graduated, or previous reciprocal list. I think that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Does anyone have any questions for either Dawn or Diana? I don't see any hands or see anyone coming off of mute. Okay, with that being said, if there are no further questions, I will go ahead and close the pre-bid meeting for today. And I thank you all for being in attendance. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.